On this episode of the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics podcast, we're digging into a mysterious vault song from the early 80s, Strange Way, or also known as Strange Way of Saying I Love You. And joining me on this episode is Arthur Turnbull from the Music Snobs Podcast. Welcome back to the show, Arthur.
Jason, thank you for having me back. I had a really, really good time talking about, I think it was I Know from your Love Sexy period. I really admire the fact that you go song by song, focusing on lyrics, because I am not always the lyrics guy.
Right. Neither was I. I mean, certain songs, yes, but not. I couldn't say like every song that I enjoyed revolved around me digging into the lyrics and understanding what was being said. Now, of course, certain Prince songs like When Doves Cry or Kiss, or like a lot of the big hits, the lyrics just go hand in hand with the music. You kind of you hear them enough that you can't escape them. But there were definitely Prince songs that I was very familiar with and I enjoyed, but never took that deep dive until I started doing this show. So thanks for that, because it's kind of one of those things where, the lyrical aspect of Prince's career and his talent, I think, often goes overlooked. Yeah. Certainly there are songs in his discography that, as I've been doing this podcast, I'm like, yeah, that wasn't really the deepest lyrical dive. Because sometimes you just write lyrics to fit or serve as a tune or a melody or something. It doesn't really have to be that deep every single time, but it's still fun to try to figure out if there's something more there. So thank you. Enjoy having you back.
Strange Way.
So Strange Way is a song we're covering, vault song, unreleased as of this recording. Yeah. Never know when things are going to get released by the estate, but as of October 2022, we have not officially received this song in any formal fashion. So, anytime that we've heard the song, it's been in some sort of unofficial bootleg or sharing or something along those lines. So it's kind of been a leaked song. It's been a song that's been known by the Prince community for a while. I didn't know this, but doing research, this was one of the songs that was potentially selected for Crystal Ball 2, which would have been released in like the early 2000s if it would have ever manifested itself into a reality. Were you familiar with that, Arthur, at the time, or is that something you learned later?
No, at the time. And I know that I first heard it after The Rainbow Children, somewhere between The Rainbow Children 2001 and Musicology 2004. And I tried my best to remember where and how I first heard Strange Way, because and I know we'll get to it, but the song, in terms of the condition that it's in, is really remarkable in that it's not tinny. It's not bass heavy. It doesn't sound like, the MP3 was made from a cassette that was dunked in a well or something like that. And how most of the bootlegs that we've heard prior to the remasters and the re-releases and such, in the Prince community, we just got used to inferior quality music. And a highlight for, the 1999 Deluxe, some of the B-sides that came out as collections immediately following his passing. To hear those at either full fidelity or as best as you could get it, right, was a treat in and of itself. And here with Strange Way, it's batteries are included as far as that's concerned. It just sounds fantastic. But I gotta tell you, I cannot remember where I first heard it. But I know what I do remember is that I knew that I was just completely struck by it, because other than knowing the time period in which it was created, you would think that it was, reasonably recent just because of the quality.
We're really fortunate in this age that we're in now, because nowadays in the 2010s, late 2010s, early 2020s, if there's been a Prince song from the vault that's been leaked, pretty much going to find it on YouTube. Somebody would have posted it on YouTube. So all you really got to do for the most part is just like type in a Prince song into the YouTube search engine. And if it's been leaked, you'll find it. That's at least, been my experience. And if I can't find it on YouTube, the chances are it either hasn't been leaked or hasn't been widely leaked. And so that's a really huge benefit that, folks didn't have 30 years ago, 30 years ago. And it was really all about, buying the boots, sharing tapes, whatever you had to do to get to listen to the songs. And that's where the quality suffered because, like you said, a copy of a copy of a copy because somebody paid the money for the boot. But, back, when you could burn CDs or copy tapes very easily with a dual tape cassette player, that's how you shared songs. And each recording of that cassette just got worse and worse and worse from a sound quality standpoint. And you're right, this one sounds amazing. And to segue your comment about the time, I haven't mentioned that yet. So this song was, for all intents and purposes, as far as we know, was recorded in 1981. We don't really have specific recording dates like we do for some songs in Prince's vault that have been widely written about and discussed. This is still kind of during that era when I think like a lot of the records weren't being kept as immaculately as they were later. Because this is, from my understanding, this was recorded at Prince's home studio in the Kiowa Trail home in Chanhassen. So it wasn't recorded, as far as we know, at any studio, like official studio, not like any studio in Minneapolis, any of the Los Angeles studios that he recorded at. So we're kind of left up to stories and estimations as to when this song was recorded. And so we're targeting 1981. So Prince Vault says, based off of stories told about the song, that makes sense from a timing standpoint. So that's kind of and from the sound. I mean, sometimes you can listen to a Prince song, a Prince Vault song, and predict when you think it was written and recorded based off of the sound of it. Prince changed his style up quite regularly, as we know, and so it wouldn't make sense for a song that sounds like "Strange Way" to have been recorded in 1986 or 1987. Just didn't match that sound. So I buy it. I don't know. Do you buy it? 81 sound right to you?
I absolutely buy it. There was an article in Vulture. I guess now we don't necessarily need to say magazines anymore, but you and I are of a certain age. Vulture magazine, right? ran an article on their website, interviewing members of the sort of the classic revolution that we know, and asked and compiled these great Prince stories, from each member. And Lisa Coleman told a story about a time when she was living in Prince's house, that house. It was after they came off the road from Dirty Mind, supporting Dirty Mind. So this would have been, late winter, early spring, 1981. And she, having moved from Los Angeles to join Prince's band, didn't have a place to stay there back in Minneapolis. So she was living with Prince for a while. And she detailed this conversation that they had, where one day Prince was talking about her getting her own place. And I believe the quote was, as Lisa put it, Prince saying, well, Lisa, you're here now. What are you going to do, Lisa? Like, what are you going to do? And she said that it just felt tense. The conversation just felt tense. So she mapped it in terms of a time frame, saying, we were on the road. We were just coming off of tour. We know that she didn't tour in 1979, 1980, when Prince opened for Rick James during his Fire It Up tour. And we do know that she toured Controversy. Gail Chapman, his initial keyboardist, was no longer in the group. So we do have a pretty good albeit broad range in when this was recorded. I kind of have a theory, absolutely unscientific.
Hear it.
Well, you figure that Lisa shows up on the Times debut album, and as background, you can really hear her in "The Stick," the final song. We know that album was released in November of 1981. We also know that Controversy wasn't released until October. We also know that the day before or the weekend before Controversy was released was the infamous opening of the Rolling Stones at the LA Coliseum. 2 days where Prince is booed off the stage with everyone, right? So we know that Prince is in this period of transition where he's got a lot going on, and Lisa is smack in the middle of that period. So I really feel that this song was made closer to the summer going into the fall of 1981, just because it would seem that if you're coming off of the road, you're coming off of Dirty Mind, and Jason, I apologize, I meant to actually write down, okay, when was the last Dirty Mind date, right? But it's like, if you're coming off of that, hey, Prince, can I stay with you? That's gonna go pretty good for a little while, right? You got to get 6.
Yeah, and she's helping out recording the Time album.
Exactly.
Yep. She's useful to him.
She's useful to him, but you got a guy who's got, he's got some albums coming out. He's simultaneously recording 2 albums. This is before. Let me take one.
Well, let me just tell you one thing. April 6, 1981 was the last date of the Dirty Mind tour. So
okay.
I know it was after April 6th.
We know it was after that, right? So yeah, it's like what we as your listeners, but also as a community, particularly the younger faction, for lack of a better word, of the Prince community. It's hard to remember a time before Purple Rain. It's hard to remember a time when Prince, who is, was, and forever will be Prince, but before Prince was Prince, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got a guy, he's 23 years old. Lisa's like 21. He's coming off of an album called Dirty Mind that the critics love, but the public sort of kind of not really. Particularly Black radio. His music is not being played anymore. He's all but a one-hit wonder from the standpoint of his, commercial popularity in that way. He's an alternative musician, which is great. But he wants to regain his foothold in Black radio. Controversy is a vehicle for him to do that. But the Time is also a vehicle for him to do that.
Yep.
Andre Simone, his bass player, but also his brother, is leaving the band. It's not necessarily like a mystery or some sudden thing. It's part of a plan. But Andre's leaving the band, and he's bringing in Mark Brown on bass. Really young, unseasoned, and Prince has got to get him up to speed and get him road ready because they're planning a tour to support Controversy after the release of this album. So the picture I'm trying to paint is, you got a guy that's got a lot going on, right? So if at any time he's going to have a conversation about, Lisa, what are you going to do? You're just living with me. Are you going to commit? Like we don't know the outer parameters of this conversation and the meaning of it, right? But for this to be kind of like a tense conversation, that from Lisa's standpoint, from the itty bitty quotes that we have, And as Prince fans, we love to elaborate and expand upon. But from that little bit of information that we have, we could figure like, okay, it's just kind of coming out of nowhere as far as she's concerned, right? It would make sense that it's closer to the time, pardon the pun, when he's going to release and bring out this new band, this new record, their debut, his fourth record that he is particularly targeting to kind of get himself back into the God, such a corny phrase, the hearts and minds of the public, right? And kind of get his agenda going, you know? So I'm kind of thinking it was like late August, September that he makes this record, Jason.
I'm with you. And I think there's a story that I read about Lisa's experience with this song and her experience living with Prince, where after they had like this disagreement, fight, whatever you want to call it, she allegedly went for a walk. I mean, I read that she went for a drive and I read that she went for a walk. I mean, shit, who knows? 40 years ago, like, right. How are you going to remember details like that? But let's say, hypothetically, she went for a walk. You don't go for walks in winter in Minneapolis, Chanhassen. Right. You will go for walks in the summer, early fall.
Right.
So again, like if she's going outside to kind of vent or to get out of the house, go for a walk, it's probably going to be in the warmer months. So again, it's just all speculation. It totally makes sense based off the time. We knew it was after the tour ended in April, and we have to assume it was between that and the release of Controversy and the tour subsequent supporting tour. So that leaves us about 6 months, 5-6 months of time to choose from. It totally makes sense that it was in that middle of 81, but we just don't have any dates, and that's where like Dwayne's book comes in, Prince Vault comes in, where it's like on this date, on August 27th, 1981, Prince writes and records Strange Way. We don't have that. We don't have that for a lot of these late 70s, early songs. So it is what it is, and we just have to move on with that. A little information that we have. All right, so you touched on the story about this being, according to Lisa, a song written kind of as an apology of sorts. They have this falling out. Prince wants her to kind of make a move, and some people need that push. They're comfortable. Sure, she wasn't paying rent. She was living for free in Prince's house, and she buying or renting a house in a city that you barely lived in. Like she just, like you said, moved from Los Angeles, but then right away went on tour. So she probably spent very little time in the city itself. It can be scary, especially for somebody who's as young as Lisa was at the time. But sometimes people need that push. It's no different than a child being pushed out of their parents' house when it's time, like spread your wings, little bird, and fly. So maybe she needed that. Maybe she needed that push, even though it might have been painful at the time. She might have needed that push from Prince to kind of decide, like, do I want to continue doing this with this man, stay in Minneapolis, get my own place, do I head back to Los Angeles and say it was fun, but I'm out? And so she had to make a decision at that point. So yeah, the story is kind of the backstory of this song. And so when we go through the lyrics, which we'll begin doing here shortly, you got to think of it with that framework in mind, that this is kind of a song Prince wrote in response to that fight that he had with Lisa, somebody who lived with him, was close friends with, collaborator, somebody he relied on, in the absence of Gail as a platonic friend, as far as we know. I mean, we know Lisa's gay. I don't know if Prince knew that in 1981. I have no idea. But as far as all accounts that we've ever heard from the two of them, specifically now Lisa, in the later years, is that they were just platonic friends, and that's all it was ever going to be.
Something that I really like about Strange Way is that it's a case of Prince responding to something that happened as it happened. In other words, we've heard stories about When Doves Cry is about, this woman, she's always in my hair is about that woman, Cream might be about, the barista in Starbucks. This is not a song where he's taking abstractions or, certain constructs or even composites of things to then get his point across. Even if the song is for somebody, right? I wrote this song for you. It's When Doves Cry. What the hell does that mean, right? Here is, this happened. It went off the rails. I didn't mean it that way, Prince. At least I didn't mean it as the result of it happened. Let me do something to repair this relationship. And he speaks really plainly in the lyrics. Mm-hmm. Again, no doves, no flowers, no colors, no clouds. And I'm not saying that in a comical way, but what I am saying is that this is an example of how Prince really did communicate with people, women in particular. And another quote from Lisa speaking about this is that music was always how he communicated best. And Jill Jones, I don't even need to contextualize Jill Jones to your listeners, but, Jill Jones has even said, hey, some men give you flowers, Prince gave you songs.
Yeah.
So as we get into the lyrics, it's like, it really knocks me out about how that we know of. There are probably very few songs, like maybe before you get to something like, I can't remember all the songs on Emancipation, but like the songs that he wrote for Maite, for example.
Yeah, just two, basically.
Right, that is just very direct, right? But it's like this is early Prince, critic darling, alt artist, famous to the point where it's still not weird to see Prince in the grocery store. It's like, he's not at the level where it's like you see famous people doing normal stuff, right?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? You get them, you really get them
doing normal stuff. Yeah.
Right. And again, in the middle of this dude making 2 albums, it's important enough that he takes the time, and we'll get into how long it actually took him to make the song, right? But it's like, he took the time to, bang this out. Okay, I'm gonna stop.
No, I'm sorry, but yeah, it reminded me, you mentioned She's Always in My Hair, and that's another kind of famous apology song that Prince wrote for a woman. I covered that in my She's Always in My Hair episode, Jill Jones. We all kind of, those of us who listen to the music, Prince's music and his B-sides, and know the backgrounds behind it, already know the story, so I'm not going to reiterate it here. But this is kind of like a first stab at that kind of a song where, like you said, it's a reaction to something, a reaction to an argument or an event in his life where he felt the need to write a song to speak to the person who he'd spoken to. Speak to the person who feels hurt by something that Prince did or said. And he didn't always do this, obviously, because that just, he was a human being. Yeah. And he was in charge of a lot of people and a lot of people's livelihoods. So there was probably a lot of hurt feelings over the course of his career where he didn't write a song about it, but I guess you would consider that, like, the fact that he wrote a song for Lisa and for Jill and for Maite and whomever else that I'm missing, those were people that were important enough in his life. And like you said, possibly that was just something that he did more so for women than he would for, one of his male friends. All right, so let's get into the lyrics. The song itself is short, at least the version that's leaked. We have no idea if there's a longer version out there, if what we found is just a truncated version of Strange Way. But what we got is about a 2-minute song. It's short but sweet. Basically 2 discrete verses. Sometimes I wanna tell you, baby, exactly how I feel. But I get the strangest feeling, baby. You won't be good for me. tell you, baby, exactly how I feel. But I get the strangest feeling, baby. You won't think I'm for real. Don't take me for granted, girl. I'm not some kind of fool. I just have a strange way of saying I love you. And it's kind of like a verse and chorus scrunched together into one. All right, so with the first verse, Arthur, I'm getting again like you get the impression this is a bit of an apology song. He's apologizing for basically being a jerk sometimes, like people can be, saying something maybe he was thinking about and didn't really mean it to verbalize or come out as blunt or as painful as it possibly did to Lisa. And just one of those after reflection, a brief reflection, maybe realized it was not the way he wanted to communicate, not the way he wanted to see that that encounter manifest itself. What are some things in this first verse that you wanted to point out or that you find interesting?
Well, I definitely get the vibe that he's not apologizing for what he said, but maybe how he said it or how it came off. There's nothing in these lyrics that get into "I'm sorry I was wrong." In fact, he kind of stands. He stands on his hill when we get to "Don't take me for granted, girl. I'm not some kind of fool," and that could be some insight on how he may have been feeling as it related to Lisa living with him. It's like, all right, are you living with me? Well, you're living with me because I'm letting you live with me. But are you living with me because you're really not sure how you're going to commit to this? Are you seeing how it goes? And are you just waiting for the next tour? Because then you don't have to, you're on the road. You don't have to worry about, where you're going to live. You're eating my food, you're driving my car, all that. But, the way that he starts about sometimes I want to tell you exactly how I feel, but I get the strangest feeling that you won't take me for real. That he very likely has some attraction to her. They have been working closely. I don't remember it strongly enough to quote it or even be positive that I'm getting it right. But I seem to remember that when he first heard Lisa's playing, he was really drawn to her technique and her mastery of the piano. And I think that she was introducing him to music and introducing him to styles that actually helped him better communicate musically for some ideas that he wanted to do that kind of manifested later, right? So I'm saying that, with the way that they've been working, very almost undoubtedly close, irrespective of whatever girlfriend that, he had at the time, he probably built up some attraction to her, and some genuine feelings about her as a person. Mm-hmm. So communicating that to her, telling her exactly how he feels, which he may or may not be 100% on. She might not think that he's being, serious. Guys known to have a sense of humor. Maybe they've joked around a little bit. Maybe they've got a whole brother-sister thing, So it's basically saying, listen, I really care for you, but I have some concern that you may be taking me for granted, not just with this living arrangement, but with this job that you have as my keyboard player in my band, this opportunity, that you have, that if it doesn't work the way you want it to work, you'll leave. Now, I already got Andre that left me, which I knew was coming, but I'm replacing one person. I don't want to have to turn around and replace you too. Mm-hmm. So, and Jason, this is Arthur going way off the ranch, right? But
I love it, man.
But just know that I have a strange way of saying that I love you. What are you going to do, Lisa? Well, Prince, okay, I'll stay in Minneapolis. Great, let's get in the car. I'm going to find you a place to live. Let's go. In other words, boom, you're here. Let's do this. Let's lay the roots down, and we can really build this thing and move forward.
Yeah, like I kind of alluded to before, a little bit of a tough love situation. Like he loves her as a way that you love somebody when you maybe some attraction, but definitely love their skills, love their energy, love what they bring to what you're doing. Definitely didn't, and again, to have for Prince to allow her to live with him like that, it's not something that he would have just done for any hired hand, right? So
yeah,
I get the feeling that they truly were friends. And this is where like conversations, there's been, and I don't want to go too far off the rails either, but there's been discussions, there's been a lot of interviews with the Revolution after Prince's passing. And anytime they start talking about the mid 80s era, the post Purple Rain era, you get conversations, you get quotes from band members that feel like, well, Prince changed after Purple Rain. He became less accessible.
He had his own bus.
He had his own bus, and
we had our own bus
when we were on stage or when
city to city.
Yeah. We only interacted when we were on stage or during rehearsals. We weren't pals anymore. And nobody else, I don't think. I mean, yeah, there's exceptions. Some of his guy friends, I'm sure he hung out with, but not in the same way. Like these are people that knew Prince before he was a megastar, and the fact that like Lisa lived with him, like a roommate situation. It wasn't even like a boyfriend girlfriend situation. It was roommates. So I can kind of relate to some of their their stories and how they felt about that when that happened, because to them he was just, I mean, he was always Prince. He was front and center. He was the guy.
Sure, exactly. Yeah.
It wasn't Prince and Lisa on stage. It was Prince, and these were his backing band. But take away that, and he was the one that was paying them, of course. But it just, I think for some of them, especially in the early days, it just felt like more than that. They felt more like true friends. So I get that, and I don't want to, talk too much about that because it's not really the era to talk about that. But at the same time, this is kind of a story that explains a little bit maybe why somebody like Lisa might have felt that way in 1985, coming from where she was at with him in 1981.
Yeah, and I think that's really valid. I mean, the band that he had in 1981 is really the nucleus of what took him all the way to 1986. Bobby Z, Lisa Coleman, Dr. Fink, Prince himself, Des Dickerson being replaced by Wendy Melbourne, Andre Simone being replaced by Brown Mark. And even though Prince has always been a singular artist, when you see Prince on the marquee, it's him. When you see, for example, like Sade on the marquee, people get confused that it's one woman. No. So that happens to be the name of the band. So there's a difference. And I've never been in a band, but I have done a podcast with 3 other people for over 10 years. That's the best, closest thing to a band that I've ever been in. And it's hard to manage these personalities. And, if one person drops out and you work in a new person, that's not easy, and still be able to retain the same kind of chemistry. Because you don't retain the same kind of chemistry, but you at least need to know if this person will really fit, not just musically, but also from a personality standpoint and a commitment standpoint, right? Yep. And so I think that that's some of what you're seeing in that first verse, particularly at the part where he starts the bridge going into sort of the strange way of saying, I love you, to don't take me for granted.
Yeah. Yep. I'm with you on that one, Arthur. Okay. I think we probably covered that first verse. Let's go into the second verse. Sometimes I really want you, babe. I want you sexually. But I don't want a friendship relation to suffocate, you see. I don't expect for you to understand. Sometimes it's hard for me to. I just have a strange way of saying I love you. Sometimes I really want you, baby. I want you sexually.
Oh.
But I don't want our friendship relation to suffer, can't you see? I don't expect for you to understand. Sometimes it's hard for me too. I just have a strange way of saying I love you. Honey, I love you. All right, so the second verse is where, like, when I was first listening to it with the intention of dissecting it after reading the story about it being about Lisa Coleman.
Right, yeah.
This is where it gets a little crazy. Like, it's a little confusing because he says right there in the very, first two lines, I really want you. I want you sexually.
Right.
But I don't want our friendship to suffer, basically, is what he's saying. Like, I want you, but I think being your friend is more important to me. So I'm just letting you know. I'm just putting it out there. Now, the question is, did he really mean this? Or was this just something that he put in the song because he was a songwriter and, putting that romantic aspect into a song makes it more compelling? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, did I say that Prince was 23 and Lisa was probably 21 around this time and they're living in the same house?
Yeah.
Did I mention that earlier? I thought I
yeah.
Yeah. So I think this supports our earlier feeling that, yeah, it's like, okay, sometimes I want to tell you exactly how I feel, but to get the strangest news, you won't think I'm, being for real. And here's like this reveal, I really am attracted to you, but I don't want this to suffer. So he's showing some restraint. Now, let's say that, as you started out by talking about songwriting and lyricism, sometimes you just need to get from point A to point B. And so baby, Ailey, relate. Okay, I can make that work, right? Okay, I'll be succinct, but I got to say this in order for what I'm about to say to make sense. We were talking about how this song was recorded in the midst of him making Controversy and The Time. On either of those two albums, there is no style that matches Strange Way in how it sounds.
Yep.
It's I'm going to say simple. I've never made a song before, but I'm just going to go out and let me say it. It's a quote unquote simple song, right? He's got drums, bass, keyboard, guitar, 2 layers of vocals, his lead, and then his confidence lead. This really shows his prowess in the studio. He's got a studio in his house. Don Bass, his engineer, is helping him out, right? Lisa herself said that she was in this bar, for like this whole thing happened in like within a 2-hour period, right? So you could say that it probably took Prince 45 minutes to put the song together. He's got to do 4 passes over it. Well, technically 6, right? So because he's doing this new music, not such as this amazingly new style, right? But just as I Want to Be Your Lover sounds nothing like Dirty Mind, the song. Dirty Mind, the song, sounds nothing like Controversy, the song, right?
Right.
So it may have been, quote unquote, easy for him, there's that word again, it may have been easy for him to lay more into the Dirty Mind feel. Because this song isn't as unusual in terms of its sound if you put it up against particularly the first side of Dirty Mind. It doesn't have that synth-heavy feel of Controversy. It doesn't have that power ballad element to it, right? So let's say that I want you sexually, but I don't want to mess up this relationship. Can't you see that, right? Let's just say that it could work if he wasn't really serious from the standpoint of kind of going back into his Dirty Mind bag and, spinning something out from that. Do It All Night or Dirty Mind or, to make it work there.
Right. This Prince just playing, basically. Like,
yeah.
Again, we don't know. I don't know. Maybe you do. I don't know if Prince knew of Lisa's sexuality at this time. I don't know if they talked about it ever, if it was ever brought up. But also, this is a man that wrote Bambi.
There you go. I think he was dead serious. I think he was dead serious. It's 1981. It's at the dawn of the AIDS pandemic. Before anybody really knew what was going on, right? There was a certain freedom sexually that was still happening, spanning off of the late 70s. Shit, the whole mid 60s, late 70s. But I'm just saying, there were completely different attitudes toward sex and what that means, the result of that, and it I don't want to say fit within his narrative, because that's not what I mean, but it fits within the context of, again, two early 20-somethings. One of them's got some money in his pocket, right? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It could go like that. Yeah. But he's showing some restraint. I don't want our friendship relation to suffer, can't you see? Because if the friendship suffers, the music suffers.
Yeah. Yeah, because then he's got to go out and find that next keyboardist, and
you see it.
They're not hard, they're not easy to find. You want a woman, like he wanted a woman, and he wanted her to be talented but also attractive,
right?
To fit the aesthetic. So it's not, when he's got a good thing, he doesn't want to fuck it up, basically.
Right.
And,
right. Hey.
So he has to throw.
Right.
He has to shoot a shot, but at the same time backpedal a little bit just to make sure, like, I don't. Ultimately the friendship is more important, but I'm still putting it out there that.
Yeah. And in truth, that could also speak to the tension, it was a tense conversation that Lisa herself had said about it. That's from what she recalled, because there's this sexual tension that's happening. So by him saying that, by him putting it into this song, which is the best way that he knows how to communicate, it releases some of that sexual tension. It's like, this is part of kind of like what's going on with me too. Oh, okay, that's out there. I feel so much better about it. Let's go make these hits.
Yeah, let's clear the air. You know what I mean? Yeah, it feels like a clear the air type of song too. Like, let's get it, let's put it out there, get it out there, and then we can just move on from that.
Right.
Okay. That's the second verse basically. And did you have any other comments you wanted to bring up with this verse?
Just how funny would it be if they recorded the stick like that evening?
Yeah, that's why we need those we need those Dwayne Tudor books from this era. But damn, how are you gonna do that? You're gonna have to do some serious interviews with people with photographic memories.
Yeah, because you figure, Prince never had any intention of releasing the song, right? So it would make sense that it wasn't necessarily logged.
No, and and essentially, like you said, it was already a very simple song. Simple in its, from an economical standpoint, because he wrote it and recorded it all in one day, all in a couple of hours, by all accounts. And so if this was ever going to be anything more than what it was, which was a song he wrote as a response to a situation that he played for Lisa and then threw it back in the, the pre-vault, if he ever wanted to pull it back out, we know that there would be more to it. We know that there would have been probably a bridge and maybe a third verse and some more musical aspects to it. It would have been deeper, and from a musical standpoint, and probably more lyrics added as well. But he did what he could with the time he had, and I think it's still super catchy. Like, the song is catchy as hell. That earworm of a keyboard book. It sounds very repetitive, but it's stuck in your head. Just like most really catchy either guitar or keyboard or piano licks do.
Yeah, because he's doing the rhythm guitar rip on the offbeat, and it's in the mix. It's discernible, but it blends in so well with the keyboard that you blink if you miss it.
even in the fact that he goes ooey ooey ooey, I mean that kind of feels like a filler. Like that's just kind of filler stuff. That would have been if he had more time or had more desire to do something more with the song. I doubt that he just would have left in his ooey 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 ooey.
Yeah.
Maybe he would have, but yeah, it just feels like that's the kind of thing you do when you want to just throw something in there because you don't have it right at that moment.
Let me ask you this: Do you think? Let me ask it this way: Do you ever wonder why he didn't use this as a B-side?
The only thing I could think of is that it was kind of like unlike "She's Always in My Hair," this song felt like potentially a song of a moment, like a very brief moment. Like that song, I feel like what led up to "She's Always in My Hair" was years of being, or a couple 2-3 years of being with Prince and kind of an accumulation of events. This feels more like a situation that happened one day. He wrote it and then didn't really want to think about it anymore. Maybe they'd moved past it, and continuing to play it, work on it some more, might have brought up some bad feelings, might have brought up some things that maybe he didn't want to explore any further. Maybe didn't want Lisa to have to continue to listen to a song where he says
that's a good point.
Sexually.
Yeah.
Because maybe that made her uncomfortable. I don't know. He was feeling like, okay, I did my thing. I said what I said. And I don't really think that we need to, dredge this up constantly by singing the song and performing the song. Because he could have done a B-side and never performed it live.
Sure.
Did that plenty of times. But just by putting it out there to the public, that makes it a little more open to interpretation, and then people start talking about where did this come from, what happened with it, kind of like what we're doing now, but just on a wider, larger scale. And maybe you didn't really want that.
Because it's easy to say, because hey, it's catchy, it really does sound good. If he worked on it a little bit more, it'd been a great pop song for him and everything. And to me, it's like, nah, that's not going to work for 1981 Prince, because it doesn't fit in the aesthetic that he's building. It doesn't fit within the mythology that he's building, not has built, that he is still building. In 1981, I can't really. It's like I wanted to think about groups that were out and popular in 1981 that either this song would have been good for, like the Cars, for example. Because see, one thing about Prince is that people being rock bands, pop bands, funk bands, R&B bands, like people knew Prince was dangerous. Like, we're gonna have to deal with this dude at some level. So I could, it's like I could really see him, because like if you hear a song like "When You Were Mine," you really could hear Rick Ocasek singing that song. Like that'd be like a great car song, but it wasn't pushed that way, because you know what I'm saying? Like, Strange Way isn't going to be pushed in the summer, fall of 1981 as a precipice of this other new album controversy that's coming. We know what controversy is all about. So yeah, it's like it's just one of those
controversy that sounds like this.
Yeah, it's just one of those, like, just maybe it would have been a fantastic song, a fantastic single, but it was just a victim of time and timing.
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange song. I mean, it's called Strange Way, but it's also kind of a strange song. It feels in some ways even antiquated a little bit for 1981. I've read and I've seen, like, okay, well, it has like some sort of psychedelic appeal to it. I don't really know how to define psychedelic. It's hard for me because I didn't grow up with that kind of music. All I can think of when I hear psychedelic is like Pink Floyd and the Beatles later stuff. It's like I know there's more to it than that, and so I don't hear it. But Strange Way, it just feels like it could have maybe worked for like a new wave group, like you said, the Cars, and add some more guitars to it, because I think it's a bit too simple musically. Like if you did work on it more, put a guitar solo in there.
Oh wow! So it's like a framework to yeah. Okay.
I mean, then
I never looked at it like that.
Then maybe it's a little meatier, something that you could actually
Mm-hmm.
imagine hearing on the radio. To me, it just sounds like a quintessential vault song because of its unfinished nature. And then by definition, it's a vault song, therefore it's unfinished for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
That's how all of these songs have to be looked at, unless we know that it was on some sort of configuration for an album and then was taken off at the last minute. That's not the case with this song. So this just feels like it has the bones, but it's just not enough for me personally to make this a viable pop song for anybody. I just don't think there's enough there personally.
I like that. The quintessential. What did you say? Quintessential
vault song. Just because
I like
it
that.
Sounds unfinished. It just really, to me, it sounds unfinished. It sounds like it was something that was recorded very quickly, which, again, by all accounts, it was. So
I'm saying, right? Because you figure you played it all the way through. It's like a little over 2 minutes, So that's like him 20 minutes of just playing. And then, there's time to rewind it, listen back, add in here, this and that. All right, that gives you like 30, 35 minutes.
You know what I mean? I like his vocals in this song. I like his vocals because he does that. He goes up and down within the same line, up and down in his register within just like the singing of a single line, which is kind of cool. Strange way of feeling, like it's up and down.
He's so warmed up because he's working all this other. He's come up tour. He's working on all this stuff. So it's like, just like the count. 1, 2, 3, hit it, and it's done.
Yeah. If you listen to this on headphones, you can hear him count it out right at the very beginning. So cool song. I'm glad we talked about it. Interesting backstory. Never it would have been great for like that Crystal Ball 2 project if that ever would have seen the light of day. People, got voted to make the final track listing, so the people wanted to hear it. I think a lot of that has to do with the time it was recorded. People wanted it, especially now and even probably back in 2000. People were like, "Oh, I want that early '80s shit." I want that. I want that pre-revolution. That early stuff, man. That's because for so many people, that's kind of like their Prince. This time frame, so they want more of that. And as far as we know, we don't have a lot of Dirty Mind and Controversy era.
Exactly.
Fault songs, I should say. There's not a lot that we're familiar with or that we know of. So it's kind of like a cool nugget.
Yeah, I would have loved to have heard him talk about it. Now, I don't think it ever would have happened. Really not his style.
Like the liner notes, like in Crystal Ball 1, just have like a little
something like that.
4-sentence blurb. Yeah.
Yeah, because the thing about it, it's like it's not based on any kind of like drama, like I cheated on you or I just what I'm saying. It's like it's not no drag out fight or thing like that. It's just, it's fundamentally a misunderstanding. It's like but not
heart.
Like he touched something, and I'm ready to go off the plant ranch again, so I don't want to.
The way I just again think of it is like I'm sure Prince had been, to your point that you made earlier in the show, he'd been mulling this situation over in his head. And so for him, maybe this little outburst, if we want to call it that, we weren't there, was a long time coming. But for somebody like Lisa, who didn't see the signs, maybe she'd been dropping hints, she wasn't picking up on it, so it might have come out of nowhere. And Prince probably, like we've all had those interactions where like, shit, I could have done that better, or I could have phrased that differently, or I, could have kept my cool or should have kept my cool when I didn't, because that person on the receiving end got something that they weren't expecting and they didn't deserve. And that's probably, we have to jump to conclusions again, is probably what happened. Something that he would have been thinking about for a while, potentially, but she hadn't been, so it kind of, broadsided her, and Prince maybe thought that he could have done it in a more nuanced way, a little more gentle. But as far as he was concerned, maybe he'd had it up to here, and so he was done being nice. Jumped down her throat, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh man, but she's really she's a cool person. I didn't mean to do it like that. I didn't mean to, upset her. So let me give you this song.
Mm-hmm.
Apologize through song. That's and if that's how I ended up going down, 40 years later, she got a song. Not that she didn't have any songs written with her in mind, but this is one for sure she can play. I mean, there's a song Lisa,
which I love,
the Dirty Mind era.
Mm-hmm.
We got that too, but anyway, I think we've probably covered as much as we need to do with this song. Unless you've got anything else you want to talk about.
No, I think we squeezed all the water out of the sponge for these two verses.
That's how it goes, man. That's how it goes. We dig in. Dig deep. Dig deep.
I have enjoyed this.
It's kind of fun just talking about the era, and what's going on in Prince's life at this time, just because it's kind of, we weren't there, so it's kind of fun to kind of go back in time. Like, we were alive, but we weren't there with Prince in the moment. So putting everything in context can be an enjoyable experience, because we're big fans of Prince's music, but also I love this era. I love the early 80s Prince a lot. So I'm always into talking about this era of his music and of his career.
Yeah. I mean, me too. I mean, for those that know me, I love a great origin story, and I absolutely love context. And thinking about discussing Prince in context, again, particularly when you predate Purple Rain, he's a whole nother person, but he's a whole nother person.
Mm-hmm.
And the lofty ideas that we have about Prince post Purple Rain, the film. Whenever I say Purple Rain this way, I'm really talking about the film, because I think the visuals really spoke and defined what we started to think of, Prince as this, larger scale figure. But these basic, not weird to see him at the grocery store or the cleaners or washing his car kind of stuff, on the rise artist. It just makes the music a little more richer to me. It also makes it easy to, go off the ranch like we did a little bit. That's fun too. But speculate more than really, what it is. But at the same time, even with our speculations, I don't think that we're that far off of how it kind of went down, because we've both been 20. I'm sure we both have platonic friends of the opposite sex, may or may not coincided with romantic relationships, but you get what I'm saying? It's like, you can speak about it in real terms and think,
shoes.
It's like, man, I really messed up. What's the best way I can do, to make this right? For some people, it would be to, plan a nice dinner, cook, call, or do something. For somebody like Prince, let me just go ahead and bang this out and just come up with some lyrics, in an hour, and have my guy go find Lisa at this bar, because there's only one bar, and I know that Lisa smokes and, maybe enjoy some whiskey or something like that. You know what I'm saying? It's like you can relate to something like that. And that is what makes this era really, 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 really cool for me. So
yeah, Lisa didn't take an Uber into the city. She was still in Chanhassen when this all went down.
Right.
I get it. Very cool. All right, so Arthur, Music Snobs Podcast. You want to tell everybody all about that?
The Music Snobs Podcast. So we are in the midst of our latest recording cycle. We've got 10 shows on deck. At the time of this recording, we have released our third, where we focus on the R&B artist Aaliyah, who tragically died at the age of 22, like a week before September 11th, 2001. And so while her death did not go unnoticed, her death certainly was overshadowed by September 11th. And we discuss her as an icon. She's had a resurgence. A lot of her albums have been remastered and re-released. And we do look at Aaliyah with the question of, is she an icon? And talk a little bit as to why she wasn't prominently included in discussion during the R. Kelly trial and conviction. You know, she came up, but she wasn't this overarching, figure. So we do topics like this, where we take artists that we're all familiar with at some level, some of us more than others, and we try to come up with angles, kind of like what we're doing right now, to be honest with you. Angles about maybe a what if scenario, not necessarily what if Aaliyah was still alive. We don't kind of do that. But what if Brandy came out before Aaliyah? How would that change how R&B went in, the late 90s, early 2000s? Because after Aaliyah, she was coming out it began this apex of female R&B artists and groups too. But we release monthly, usually the first Monday of a month. And we've got 7 more shows to do. And you can find us on Twitter at Total Music Snobs. The website is themusicsnobs.com. Please follow and subscribe in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere and everywhere fine RSS feeds are consumed. Like this show, Jason. Like Press Rewind.
Exactly. Yeah. Just gotta put it in the Google search engine, man. You'll figure it out. It'll show up.
Right. It'll show. Yeah, that's exactly right. It'll show up.
All right. Well, yeah, I really dig the show. I just actually not that long ago listened to. I know it's not a recent released episode, but I listened to the Control episode you guys did.
Oh, wow.
Control. I know that's from last year, but I bounce around on shows all the time based off the topic. Like, I want to listen to some guys talk about Control because I fucking love that album. So let me listen to these guys talk about Control for an hour and a half. And I loved it. It was a great conversation. You guys have great chemistry. So
I appreciate that.
Keep it up. Keep it up, man. All right. Well, this has been the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics podcast. I've been your host, Jason Brenninger. Like Arthur said, you can find the show just about anywhere. Also, pressrewind.net is the website that I use to host the show. Social media, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I'm also on YouTube, so if you want to listen to the show on YouTube, I also post some clips of songs. I'm one of those people that throw songs of Prince's onto YouTube.
Yeah.
I want to share it, until it gets officially released. I want to continue to share these songs and this music because I find a lot of value. Obviously, I'm doing a whole series on Prince's vault songs from the 70s and 80s, so I clearly find a lot of value in his vault recordings, the ones that we have been privy to and have had the honor of being able to listen to thanks to technology, thanks to whomever leaked them. Don't know, don't care. All I know was I love the music and I'm glad we have it. So thanks again to all the listeners, and until next time, goodbye.
I don't expect for you to understand.